For those of you who have seen a case review on my channel before, which is likely at least some of you, you'll probably know that I don't usually start these videos with a shot of me, or a shot of me next to the case, or anything along those lines. My case reviews are usually about 5 minutes long. They're shot in B-roll with voiceover, showing a lot of shots of the case, and that's pretty much it. I gave you the information on what's going on inside and some of my commentary. This is not what you'd call a typical case launch. This is the Cooler Master H500P. It's the newest case in their half series or high airflow series of cases. And with the exception of maybe a few AMD launches earlier in this year, this actually might be the most anticipated product of 2017. So I figured I'd do a little bit different kind of a video for you guys for this launch. We put together a full custom loop system inside of this case. We're gonna take a closer look at it. I'll talk to you guys a little bit more about the build process and what I think of the newest flagship from Cooler Master. Alright guys, so we're going to start off on this front panel here. Now this case is called half or high airflow, and it's called that for a reason. You can see the Cooler Master has included two 200mm airflow RGB fans here that push air throughout the entire case. Now this front panel is specifically designed to allow for that volume of air to be moved, because there's ventilation on the top, the sides, and the bottom. All the openings here are substantial, meaning that you're not going to be restricting any airflow in this case at all, no matter what kind of cooling configuration you're running. The openings are also filtered, so you're not going to have to worry about dust buildup on the inside. The only part of this case that is glass is the side. So this front, and actually the top panel as well, as we'll see in a second, is actually plexi. I'm okay with this decision. We don't necessarily need glass everywhere. The plexi actually allows for some cost savings and some weight savings. One of the things that I was most impressed with when putting this system together was that the case was not necessarily unmanageably large or bulky or heavy. Although there is an enormous amount of room on the interior, moving this case around and manipulating it in order to allow me to do cable management and to run my custom loop in here actually was pretty easy. Now this left-hand side window is the only tempered glass you're going to find in the case, and it's very similar to what you'll find on the MasterCase Maker 5T. There's a single fastening latch at the top, and the bottom of the pane of glass sits on a track. So when you detach this, it actually folds outwards like this and won't just kind of fall off the side. I did have a very small gripe though about this fastening mechanism. It looks like a flathead screwdriver would fit in here fine, and you would think that that would mean that it's a righty-tighty, lefty-loosey kind of situation, but it's actually not. It's actually left to tighten and right to loosen. So when I first got this and I tried to open up this side panel, I turned it left like you normally would, and it actually felt like it was stuck because it would not move, because left is how you tighten it. So you do have to turn it to the right and then it pulls open. Not a big deal once you get used to it, but kind of a little bit of a surprise when I first got this. Ground clearance here is a solid inch, and I wouldn't worry about any airflow down here at all. The feet are also nice and thick and wide and sturdy, so there's no question about the stability here. You can see on the top of the case that we have room for up to a 360mm radiator here, or just three 120mm fans if you prefer just that. Or if you want, there's also spaces and mounting positions for 140mm fans, and you could fit 2 of those. The top panel is this same plexi that you find on the front, and you can see the same design language as we had on that front panel as well, with the large cutouts and filtered openings to allow for maximum airflow. You can see the Cooler Master has really prioritized cooling in this case. The I/O here is fairly robust with 2 USB 3, 2 USB 2, obviously your headphone and microphone jack, got this cool lit up power button in the shape of the Cooler Master logo, and a tiny reset switch over there with a hard drive activity light there. I did mention this to Cooler Master. I would have really liked to see a USB-C port on here somewhere. There is plenty of room, and this is a high-end case. But, you know, in the grand scheme of things, I think that's something that they could work on for maybe future versions. The right side panel is obviously pretty bare, so let's take it off and see what's underneath. Now, this is one of the reasons that I could say with confidence that this is one of the easiest and best cases that I've ever worked with or built in. This cable cover is detachable with just 2 screws and allows you to have basically immaculate cable management, even if you are absolutely terrible at it. There's enough space behind here that I was able to fit all my cables, with the exception of the EPS cable over there and maybe a few stragglers down below, right under here. Now, as you guys will see in a second, this is not your normal build, and there are more wires back here than most people will normally have. This is a water-cooled build, so there's wiring for a pump. There are 6 RGB fans in here, including a fan controller, which means not only are there PWM fan cables, but there are also RGB cables behind here. There are cable extensions behind here. So there's a lot tucked behind this panel, and it still fits in and still looks great and still hides everything. Taking this panel off also allows you access to the hard drive cage down here. It just has 2 sleds. It's your normal 3.5-inch drive cage. This CPU panel is also removable in case you have your motherboard mounted and you need to change your cooler and need access to the back plate. But this also just provides you with another nice, smooth, even surface, making this the overall look of the back of your case almost as good as something you might want to show off around the front. And speaking of the front, let's flip this thing around. So here we have our custom loop built inside of the H500P. Now, the reason that I did this with this case review is because I figured this would be the perfect time to kind of show off what you could do in the interior and how much room there actually is inside these cases. Now, as you can see, I have the pump res mounted all the way to the side. There's still a huge amount of room between the end of the graphics card and the pump. You could fit an extra long graphics card, you can move this over, you can mount it up. You have basically this entire space right here that's empty, and you could do with it what you want. This power supply shroud is segmented, so you could actually take this off if you wanted to install maybe a push-pull configuration and have the radiator out front. Also, obviously, our graphics card is mounted vertically. Now, the H500P comes with 2 pre-cut expansion slots on the back for vertical GPU mounting, and Cooler Master actually sells a kit with a mounting bracket and a PCIe riser cable that you could buy off their website for this specific configuration. However, I found that I didn't need that mounting bracket to properly mount our RX Vegas 64 card here, as this is sturdy and it's not going anywhere. There's plenty of room inside for the custom loop. You could show off whatever kind of peripherals you want here. There are 2 SSD sleds down here where you can mount your drives. The rear fan mount can be used with either a 120 or a 140mm fan. In addition to the grounded openings on the motherboard tray, the cable cover also allows you to run any additional cables that you need to. Another minor gripe that I have with this case is the mounting of the power supply. In order to mount your power supply, you actually have to remove the entire shroud, take this part off, and then slide it in this way. There's actually no way to mount it through the back of the case or through the rear side. This turned into a particularly bad problem for me because I was building with a custom loop, and when I do my custom loops, I generally put the power supply in last. So that means that I had everything set up, including the pump mounted on top of the shroud, and then discovered I had no way to get the power supply in. So I had disassemble the entire loop in order to get the power supply shroud out, put the power supply in this way, and then put everything back together. Just keep that in mind when you're building, that you do need to do that first before you mount anything up here. Otherwise, you're gonna be in the same situation that I was. Another small complaint that I have is where you need to mount a 360mm radiator up top. If you actually mount it with the ports on this side as opposed to the front, you can't have a fan mounted here if you want to run tubes down. Similarly, the I/O shroud on the motherboard also gets in the way, as the tubes would run down right into it. I would have liked to see the radiator mounts be a little bit offset and a little bit further away from the motherboard, and perhaps even a centimeter or two towards the front. That way we would avoid conflicts with this area of the case if you're running tubing up here. Building in this case overall, I definitely give it a solid A, bordering on A+. With the exception of the little snafu I had with the power supply shroud, I ran into absolutely no issues whatsoever. I was extremely pleased with the way the cable management went. There was plenty of room inside for anything that I wanted to do, and the overall result looks fantastic. I want to give a big thank you to Cooler Master for sending over this review sample with plenty of time to spare so that I could work up a slightly different and much cooler review video for you guys. Also, big thanks to Mod My Mods, who provided almost all the water cooling components featured in this build. Check them out at the link in the video description. So that, in a nutshell, is the Cooler Master H500P. Let me know down below in the comments if you guys are interested in picking one up. Also, don't forget to get subscribed to the channel if you're not already, and if you want to help support what I do here, there's a link down below to my merchandise store. As always guys, thanks for watching.